you can fall into the sunk cost fallacy, which is our tendency to continue to progress with a friendship because we've invested time and effort over the years. And just by nature, your closest circle would be the people you've spent the longest with because, they're my best friend in year 7. And they've shown that, like, if you've got a friendship in the 7th grade, it's got a 76% chance of lasting a year. But then every year from then on, it's got less of a chance of breaking up or losing that friendship, which means at 13, do you really have a good scope or good awareness of what a good friend makes? But then that friend who's been your friend since year 7, when you're 20, that sort of relationship could form so many attentional biases and your like worldview and shared experiences that you're almost scared to break that off.
Welcome back to this episode of SCULPTED Podcast for us.
I'm doing the introduction now already.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, Nick, as the business owner he's outsourcing the introductions already. And so welcome back to the SCULPTED Podcast. I don't know if I'm going to keep this job for next week, but we'll see.
But that's what keeps him hungry. And that's exactly what happened yesterday when I had to I had to do your job for you.
Oh, yeah. That you're merely a donkey.
Merely a donkey.
No one will understand that reference.
No one will understand that. But they'll hear it more and more, and they'll be seeing these ones more and more.
Yeah.
And then it will just become a part of the culture.
Yeah.
You'll just start seeing kids doing these ones, and you just start seeing kids saying FTOLG. You'll start hearing kids saying you're merely a donkey.
You don't want to reveal too much of your dictionary yet.
Or the dictatorship.
Dictatorship. Christ, cut that.
I'm gonna have to bleep that one. Oh gosh, that's funny. Okay, so what's today's episode all about, Jack?
Today's episode, we're going to be talking about friendship circles, which is actually, you kind of brought that up to me. We spoke about how you differentiate different friends in life, but also the time that you allocate to them. What is the difference between these circles? How do you know, how do you know what friends go into what circle, and sort of how to live that practically as well?
Yeah, and it stemmed from a really good conversation that I had with one of those people in my circle who had always been in my circle for like pretty much as long as I know. Like the way that I know this guy is his dad, I think, sold my family our first house on the Central Coast, and ever since then we went to the same preschool together, we went to the same junior school together, high school, everything like that. And I would say that when I moved to Germany, I kind of stopped speaking to a lot of people, and I think that he misinterpreted it, and we've spoken about this pretty openly, that I didn't mean for him to be left out per se, but I think that he may have seen it as that, and we're getting through that. But that's kind of where our conversation stemmed on Thursday, where Jack and I have our unfiltered chats.
Yeah.
Which will never see the day of life for anyone in public.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. But it was really good because it made us really think. And I'd always done this thing where I'd like drawn up my friendship circle and purposely put people in or out. Then I showed it to Jack, and I explained the boundaries that I have with specific people. And I'd probably not articulated my thoughts around it as much as that moment when I spoke with you about it. Although I did make a very similar episode, probably this time last year, about the same topic. But I would say that I didn't have the articulation and the general confidence behind such wild claims.
Now that you know, and you're sort of more articulate and more set on what the whole like framework is, would you change your behavior? Or like, but in the past, when you went to Germany, would it have affected how you?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It genuinely would, because I would say that I went like relatively clean cut without letting the people know that I still wanted them to be in my life who mattered to me. So yeah, I actually would.
Yeah.
I would definitely do it differently. Although, I kind of like have to give myself a little bit of grace because I was 15.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll plea 15-year-old ignorance there. But very good question. Definitely would do it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, I think we probably, like we spoke about, is we probably suffer from different, like the framework serves us in different ways. So for you, it is almost for the other person as well, you telling them and kind of like recognizing that they do kind of serve that like role in your life and are very close to you. Whereas we sort of joked that I've got Sleepy Joe Biden on my borders of my circle. And
what a reference.
And everyone's getting through, and when you don't allocate your time wisely and value your time, like kind of on reflection, and we spoke about it, it's the biggest form of respect, kind of like valuing your time and giving your time to the people that matter most. And I think that's sort of a kind of huge important part of the like circles exercise.
I would preface that by saying it doesn't come from an evil or malice place. I think that this comes from true love, that the people who you really want to spend the most time with, you spend the most quality time with. And that is what really matters. It's not just companionship where you're with someone for the sake of being with them and you're playing Fortnite with them or just watching them play Fortnite. Like, this is meaningful, purposeful relationships, non-negotiable. Once a week you meet up with people, and it's like you both respect each other's time so much that you make it a non-negotiable to meet up bare minimum once a week and just sit.
How do you know that the friend is that type of person?
Maybe we could even talk about how our own friendship I guess came to this level, because it wasn't instant, but it was always moving to that direction. You could tell. So I think that, like, for us, we knew of each other probably when we first saw each other at MacArthur Bulls again for the first time in ages. And I didn't realize that you'd been keeping up with my LinkedIn, but I always knew Jack McLaughlin liked your post. But I didn't put two and two together that Jack McLaughlin's the same one who, was really nice to me in Mariners. And then Jack McLaughlin was also the guy who I'd see at, under 20s North Shore Mariners training. And then when we saw each other at Bulls and you took me home for the first time, or you dropped me at the station for the first time. And then I saw the Relentless on your phone. And we kind of I think we already had a few masks down just because we were already, just because of the circumstances. And it's like,
and we could tell we both worked hard and shared that. And in the elite environment, it's quite funny that it is probably more rare than you would see actually people who do work hard genuinely. So I think we sort of that kind of it was, that respect was there, I think, already, that we both weren't scared to show that we wanted it.
That's a good point, because it does seem a little bit counterintuitive to have, like, I wouldn't say that like in elite sports they're lazy. They're definitely not lazy, but you don't truly find many players who go above and beyond. And Jack and I both saw that from like the first training sessions. I think that you maybe even asked one of the other players to do extras with you, and then I was like, oh, I'll just stay back with you. And yeah, we always both saw that. And actually, I think it was also, I always made sure that I was the first one at training. I got there at around 6:30 a.m. and we'd start at 8:30. And then I think it would be you next. So yeah, that's another good thing.
Yeah, all of that work for us to both have retired. Hey.
Well, if this podcast goes anywhere, then we can be thankful for those ridiculously early training sessions.
Lots of early mornings and extras have gone into this.
Literally, yeah, indirectly, so much of everything that we put our first, 20 years of life to is relying on this podcast now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, but we went a little bit off track there. I think the main thing was talking about how our friendship grew really quickly, and then we had a lot of shared experiences. So we had a shared ideology, which I think enabled us to really like let go of our masks, you could say. Because also in the environment that we were in, sorry, like I'm not gonna lie, I was masked up to the fullest. Like I wouldn't say a word.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but it was like I had a bit of safety knowing, okay, Jack's here. Jack's a good person. I can trust on him to at least get me to the train station if need be. Uh, there was another person who also would help me get to the train station if need be, because he was actually my old neighbor, weirdly enough. But also, I hadn't seen him in years, and he didn't even know it was me until he searched me up on LinkedIn, and I just see this person has searched me up on LinkedIn before the training session. And I just start laughing.
yeah.
But that's another funny story. Yeah, masks, unlayered. Do you have a specific moment, Jack, when you like remember anything where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can probably speak about this now?
Yeah, probably. It was when I saw you at MacArthur Bulls after watching
Yeah,
your post during COVID lockdown on LinkedIn.
yeah,
Through that time, I sort of saw that you were aligned with like how hard I worked at it, and that you weren't scared to kind of put your goals out there. And
yeah,
obviously, like you said, when you're in the club environment, it's probably hard to speak about that thing because you do have a lot of masks and you kind of don't want to give anything away. But
yeah,
when we drove to the station, it I felt like it was quite natural and we related on a lot of things quite easily.
yeah,
And I think I could definitely tell after we'd have interactions, you kind of feel more like energized and like inspired almost, as opposed to,
yeah.
yeah, not to compliment you too much, but instead of feeling like, oh, that was draining, or that was yeah. And from what you said, the masks are off, so you don't have to feel like
Yeah.
you're kind of putting on a face. Whereas, yeah,
Mm.
I think it was quite natural.
I actually have a very specific moment where I think it really, really helped both of us, which was after a really bad session for everyone, where we all sat down, all of the players who were playing, well, training up, we all got sat down after training and we got roasted. And I'm not going to lie, personally, that was probably my best session. So I felt like relatively okay. But I remember everyone else was feeling like this is the worst day ever. And we got absolutely flamed by by the assistant coach.
Yeah.
And
Lovely, man.
Greg, I actually really I got along with him the most, I
Yeah,
reckon.
probably because he complimented you. You were probably smiling after that chat. You're like, oh, that was great.
Oh, good times. The only day, by the way, the only day that I was smiling at that training session. Gosh. But yeah, I think that moment, and we had like a really, really solid debrief. I think that we waited like in the car 5 minutes before you even dropped me off to the station, and I remember that specifically. I got an up and go after that training session.
Seriously, did we drive
Yeah.
home after that session? That would have been a depressing
I
drive.
remember you dropped me off. You dropped me off at the train station, in the city, like just getting off, the freeway when you. Oh, I can't even remember where it was, but I do remember pretty specifically.
Okay.
I just don't know train stations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think,
That I think.
yeah, I think like we have spoken about with the different circles and what differentiates them is on the outer circles where you're not as close to them is shared experiences. So,
Yes.
but
Shared
I think
experiences.
in that moment we both had shared experiences, and through it, because we sort of knew our ideologies aligned, both
Yep.
of them contributed to us forming like trust, and like we could trust each other, we could rely on each other for that like safe space as well, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely what contributed to like having a strong friendship like we do.
100%. I think that well, for us, it started off with the ideology. A lot of the times it's shared experiences, and then you can start to get the ideology part. Like for my other closest friend, alongside Jack, it's the shared experiences part first, and then ideology next. Whereas for us, it was ideology first, then shared experiences. And then we had some really, really crazy shared experiences when I would go and visit Jack in the UK, which happened twice. And for me, that was like massive because I never really met up with anyone overseas by myself as an independent, 17-year-old. So when I met up with Jack, it felt like I was home because I'm like, Jack's here. That's sick. And additionally, we also both left MacArthur Bulls at the exact same time, like literally like a week apart. And the shared experience. For context, for people who are watching on here, Jack's down here to me, and it's just a little celebration on the camera, so don't mind us. But the shared experiences, and it was such a unique shared experience as well, that it was like, yeah, well, no other kids our age are really doing this. You were my age at the time, right? 19. Yeah. So it was crazy. And then additionally, the second time that I visited Jack, I was aiming to make it for Jack's debut, to be there, but my plane got delayed, and unfortunately I didn't make it. But maybe, Jack, you can go on to what happened on your debut.
In that debut, I tore my meniscus, and that was pretty much the end of my serious football career. But I didn't know it was torn then. But it's sort of in that big moment, like, our kind of like big moments, definitely in our football career, where we took so seriously and it was so meaningful to both of us. We've sort of both been at those like crossroads for each other.
Yes. Actually, it's so interesting that they've been shared almost coincidentally, because straight after the injury happened, when I arrived and I got to your house, and how long did we speak for that night?
Yeah, long time. That was probably the latest you've ever stayed up.
I think we literally went to bed at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
That was the longest.
Maybe that's why my knee didn't recover. If I'd got a good sleep that night, I'd still be playing.
1% recovery score. Goodness. Actually, you know what? I could probably check what my recovery score was for that day. I think it was really low from memory, because I did have WIP back then.
Yeah.
And then we went to the gym the next day, and that was crazy time. But shared experience.
Yeah.
And it was a unique shared experience, because the only other person you shared that experience was with your dad.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I almost felt like privileged to be there for such a pivotal moment in your life. And then the same thing happened when I decided to move back to Australia in Budapest, when and by this time, I think that when you had a lot of your health issues, we probably weren't in contact as much. And just like when I was also going through my health issues, actually, no, I think we were still pretty in close contact then. But it was like, we were kind of managing it through our own personal moments and keeping in touch and just giving updates, because it was like so crazy what was happening at the time. Yeah.
I think, and I think now that we've sort of, with because our friendship was built on the ideology, I think we were able to trust each other with definitely like the health issues. Speaking about that, when you were thinking about coming back from Budapest and doing your recovery here, and then sort of like when you were at the crossroads with football, whether to keep pursuing it seriously. I think it almost, those shared experiences kind of like told us that we were able to rely on each other.
Yeah.
Which I think is really valuable.
That's actually a really good point, because I think we'd probably been close for like a year, and thinking about like someone who I'd been close with for a year to then really have a large influence over the decisions of my life.
Yeah.
That's like a really quick
bound.
Yeah,
I think so too. Yeah.
Which I think is what you're saying is how it's the ideology first, which kind of enabled us to really trust each other with valid opinions. And really it's compounded more and more since. And that's the example that I think we can give with the circles, about how you may start on an outer ring and then work your way in just through either shared experience or ideology. But typically ideology will start in the closer kind of rings first.
And from probably going deeper into the friendship circles, what would you say are the main benefits you can take from knowing that and having that realization and managing your friendships or relationships in that way?
Yeah, well, we probably should go over what the friendship circles are, but we'll do that in a second. But to answer your point first, I think that when you look at the friendship circles that we'll go through, you'll kind of see the progression that people can make. And like someone could get like one of those tickets, like when you're at like, I don't know, Disney World or whatever, and you get like the tickets and skip the line. Like some people will get those tickets.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ideology ticket, because shared experiences, they can hang around the edges of your friendship circle, because it's like, I feel like a lot of friendships are almost forced through shared experiences, where it's like, just because I went to school with these people, just because we, you know, ha ha he he's all the time, I'm friends with them. And I'm not to say that that's a bad thing, but if you were to be literally situated in another city, would you still be friends with those people? You probably would just be friends with the people who you also went to school with.
Yeah. And the ideology ticket that you're saying is, it's the same thing, like we'll probably speak about more, the masks, with when you know that someone aligns with your ideology and your values are the same, you're more willing to drop a few masks and be more authentic. Whereas shared experiences almost forces you to put that mask on and act in a certain way.
Yeah, very good point. And the reason for that is because a lot of the times we put on masks is because we don't want people to truly see who we are yet, because it may be either intimidating, it may be either a little bit embarrassing, it could be confrontational. So when you make that explicitly clear from the get-go that that is your ideology and you take those masks off, then it becomes a lot easier, because you're not looking for the validation as such. When I figured out that Jack had a very similar ideology to me, I wouldn't necessarily be looking for the validation where it's like, oh yeah, we had this shared experience, maybe this will get the, you know, go the fast pass, whatever it is. The ideology, when the mask was down, really gave that fast pass. And I do remember, I explicitly do remember when you asked me to get the maps up, I think it was, and I go onto your phone and I'm like, relentless.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
that was like, I think the biggest mask down for me, because I'm like, okay, we probably think the same.
Or maybe I was manipulating you like Andrew Bustamante. That would have been ahead of my time, wouldn't it? Could you imagine the foresight from that? Like 3 years ago? That would have been unbelievable. Yeah. I'm not that smart. The CIA spy.
Or are you manipulating? Are you coercing me now?
Yeah, I have no idea. Can't even spell it.
I can't even pronounce it, so we're even. Okay, so maybe we can talk a little bit about the circles that we have. Now, maybe I can go into it a little bit because I kind of like created it, but then Jack, you can probably go into your thoughts around it because you recently did it as well. So the way that I see it is I've got 4 circles, and the closest circle is the people who I purposely have to at least spend, like, let's say bare minimum once a week with. And it could be whether it's 30-minute catch up, whether it's a 3-hour catch up, whatever time of day it is, those people can send me a message and I'll be there for them. Whether it's 2 a.m., whether it's 1 p.m., I'll be there. But bare minimum, I have to catch up with them once a week. The people on the second circle are people who could be in the number 1, but typically because of situations, maybe a time zone, or maybe it's also the ideology, they aren't there yet. Or maybe they previously have been there. And then in the third circle, it's people who you enjoy spending time with, but may not share the exact same ideology as you. But you'd spend a bit of time with them throughout the week. Maybe you see them once every 2 weeks, whatever it is. But they're the people who are a little bit less consistent in your ideology, but you like to be with, and maybe you have a good time with them speaking about your ideology or each other's ideology. And then on the outer ring, you've got all the people who you have a lot of shared experiences with, and you almost feel obligated to keep them as good friends, and you would catch up with them whenever they send you a message, but it's typically within a restricted time area, and it's not anything where I'd say, you send me a message at 1 a.m. and I'll be there and I'll meet up with you. It's more, I mean, not to say that you wouldn't, like, I think given the situation where it's dire enough, you know, I think that I'd like to do that for anyone, in any of my circles, but it's the type of thing where it's more more separated. And then the last circle outside of that is almost just anyone who you know. And in that case, it's like if they were to message me on Instagram and say, "Do you want to meet up?" It'd probably take a lot for me to actually make it work. And I'd probably have to entertain it a little bit before actually seriously doing it. But that's also not to say that you can't give them the time of day to earn their next position up, because it may just be one time that you meet with them and they earn their next position up. So I would also preface that anyone that is in any of your circles, you shouldn't write off, because they could become your number one. You don't know. So everyone's got their masks. Now, that was a brief little overview. Maybe, Jack, you can talk about your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I think obviously you explained that to me before I did the exercise for my like friendship circles as well. And I would say that the main thing that I kind of differentiated it with is the time that you'd give them, and kind of what makes you want to spend that time. And so for my closest circle it would be a priority to keep those people in my life, and with external situations and everything, almost you'd have to go out of your way to invest in those friendships. Because I think, like you said, it's not as if when you're stuck in one circle, you can't progress, because obviously, like we've spoken about, our friendship did move through the circles. But yeah, I would say that it would be the willingness to invest time that is the biggest like differentiator between the circles.
Yeah. Do you have any examples, without naming names, obviously, where someone has made the biggest leap, and what typically can make someone make a leap in your circles, or even do the opposite?
Yeah. It would be like a deep show of trust, I think, whether that's forced or just situational. So like we spoke about with us, but also if there is like that deep show of trust, and there are studies that have kind of shown that when participants were given a budget, say like a hypothetical budget to choose friendship traits that they had to pick in a friend, it was they either had to pick luxury traits, which was like emotional intelligence, like shared like gossip, all that, or like necessary traits, which are loyalty, honesty, and all of that. And I think, yeah, the honesty and the like reliability to share something that's vulnerable, and I almost like kind of remove those masks just because of the situation. I think that's definitely what's probably like elevated friendships or like built friendships the quickest for me.
Very, very good point. I love I guess you could say, analogy of the budget, because we also spoke about that. And I do believe that when you have less time, naturally the companion friends who you just spend time with for the sake of spending time with, they will fade. And it's like when you ask your parents who they still speak to from school or who their closest friends are, typically it's not those people. Like maybe they spend a few time, they catch up with a friend from school here and there. Maybe their closest friend is from school coincidentally, but a lot of the time it's like their closest friend they no longer catch up with. It's maybe just a Facebook message or a facey message, as they say.
Yeah.
Or you might say that one as well. Oh, but that's where I think it's like survival of the fittest with the budget. I think that was really prevalent for me, was that the people who I really, really treasured and spend the most time with, they would naturally just work their way into my schedule. And it's like, for example, you, Alfio, Val, the other ex-co-host who I have the podcast with, these types of people, I will just purposely schedule in time, because it's like, yeah, meaningful, purposeful. We get so much out of it. Shared interests, shared experiences, relatable. And the best part of all, you just feel so much better for speaking with them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the biggest thing is in differentiating what people to spend the most time with and what people to put in each circle is, do you feel more energized after speaking to them, or do they drain your energy after you hang out with them? And kind of like being mindful in
Yeah.
in like analyzing if you can be truly honest with them. Do you trust them with something, or do they have those luxury traits like a companionship friend? Is it it's a good laugh about that shared experience, which you need in life. Obviously, it's enjoyable, but for long term and the people that you want to keep closest to you, I think it's like most important for those necessary friendship traits.
Yeah. The one thought that came into my mind was for the people who don't have the tight circle where it's someone where you get so much just joy from. What do we do for those people? Because I think there's a lot of people like that who don't know what it's like to have such a close relationship as we do, to where they only know what they know, therefore they think that that's what a friendship is.
Yeah, and that's look. We spoke about it as well. Is with that you can fall into the sunk cost fallacy, which is our tendency to continue to progress with a friendship because we've invested time and effort over the years, and just by nature, your closest circle would be the people you've spent the longest with because they're my best friend in year 7, and they've shown that like if you've got a friendship in the 7th grade, it's got a 76% chance of lasting a year, but then every year from then on, it's got less of a chance of breaking up or losing that friendship.
Damn.
Which means at 13, do you really have a good scope or good awareness of what a good friend makes? But then that friend who's been your friend since year 7, when you're 20, that sort of relationship could form so many attentional biases and your like worldview and shared experiences that you're almost scared to break that off.
Yeah. Such a good point. Great stats as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, because that's definitely getting clipped. Yeah, that was sick. I think that one of the biggest things is actually the sunk cost fallacy when speaking about people who you feel obligated to be friends with. And when I was explaining it to one of my closest friends, I was explaining that, and I realized that it was the sunk cost fallacy. And similar to a few other things that we've spoken about before, Jack, where it's like these different types of fallacies, it's really difficult to understand the full context of one of these fallacies without it relating to your life. And that was one of the biggest moments where I realized that's the sunk cost fallacy in a friendship, and you feel obligated to entertain it. And I'll be honest, it's actually really difficult to be aware of the sunk cost fallacy and do something about it, because that's costly. And people will very, very much judge you for it. But it's such a moral quandary where it's like, do I do it for myself? Do I do it for the relationship? Do I do it for the people around me? Is it a net benefit to kind of cut specific people off, or at least dim down our relationship and set some really hard boundaries? And it may be messed up to say for the outside perspective, but when I bring it back to who I love the most and who I believe gets the most from me as well, prioritizing these specific people in your life is actually really important, because you can't give all of you to every single person. Like in Jack's closest circle and in my closest circle, in the closest of closest, no more than 3 people. And I don't think that there should ever be more than 3 people, because these people need your all. Like they truly need your all, and you can't give your all to everyone. So you have to be very, very, very specific in who you choose to be in that circle. And I also believe that there should be a period of time where you've probably got no one in that circle. And I believe that I probably had that period of time for about 2 years where I had no one in that close circle. And this was probably when I was 15.
It was such a good point that I was celebrating.
It was such a good point. Context again, the balloon started going.
Yeah.
I need to clip this part because this was actually a bit.
Yeah.
I had probably a 2-year period where I had no one in my closest circle, and I went from having probably one person in that circle and just absolutely no one. And I look back at it again, and I think I could have dealt with it better, although it did put me in a position to start fresh. And it was difficult during that time, but I also do think that I am the type of person who doesn't need extremely close people around them to survive, whereas some people rely on other people. I wouldn't say that I'm one of them. I would say that people around me excel me rather than regress me, or whilst I'm by myself at least, I can probably propagate myself to where I'm not regressing myself either. So I think that's the exact same for you as well. We can probably survive quite a good amount of time just being by ourselves and giving us that reset so that we can then build upon. And build upon, I did, because ever since then, I started to build these very, very meaningful relationships with people. And I started to get so much more from the friendships that I had, where a lot of the friendships that I had were shared experiences, which quite often left me feeling worse off because I was quite often like at the bottom of the barrel of a friendship group where I just felt off worse for it. And maybe Jackie, you can talk a little bit about your own experiences there as well.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you said is to make that decision to cut people off because of sunk cost fallacy, and that maybe at this point in life you don't align. You have to be brave, and like for you to make that decision in Germany, it would have been a really brave decision. That's why so many people stay with those friends, because you'd rather have a 4 out of 10 friendship than a no close friend. Whereas I think, and what you said about how do you really know who to maybe cut off or when to, or if you don't have anyone in that close circle, how do you recognize that? I think it's the work on your ideology and your own path. So if you know where your values are, your goals are, your ideology, and where you want to go in life, I think sort of like more self-awareness will give you the ability to be able to see that and recognize that in other people too.
Very good point, because if you don't know what your ideology is, how are you going to build upon your closest people who are based in ideology? That's a very good point. And I will give myself a little bit of I'll take a bit of credit away, because I think that me moving to Germany was actually a really easy way for me to set boundaries. So it was almost a nice excuse for me to set boundaries. I think that I'd probably wanted to do it for a lot longer. Like, I'd say that I was probably 13 and realizing that, you know, the people I'm surrounded with aren't the best for me. And that was like the action that I would take towards that would be I just wouldn't go out and go to the parties with them. I would make very strict boundaries, and I'd use football as an excuse for it. I'd say, no, I've got training, no, I've got a game. And that was a convenient excuse. And then Germany was just the most convenient excuse, because it's like, oh, well, I've moved countries. And then it got even more convenient to use these excuses to, and I say use these excuses, it was an easy way to protect myself from any backlash that I got from these friends, because you are going to get backlash.
And it's an uncomfortable thing. And almost giving yourself the grace that it's definitely a challenge that I've been working on in my own life as well, is no can be a sentence. It doesn't have to it doesn't have to be an explanation, and being able to say no and be confident with the time that you are giving, I think is really valuable in forming those really close friendships and true friendships as well.
Yeah. It's a difficult one because there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But from the moment that you're basically in school, you're kind of compounding things against you in the future that you probably want to fix. Because, like, my intention is to make friends at school, to make my schooling experience nicer, and to make, you know, the time when I leave school nicer, because I've got friends from school. But if those friends are only there for companionship and you then have to get rid of them, after you leave school and after you kind of reprioritize your life, you're kind of working back all of the previous things that you worked into. And it's such a difficult road to walk because of the sunk cost fallacy and because of the shared experience and obligation that you do have to, let's say, at least entertain it. And it's not an inherently wrong thing. I don't actually know a better way of doing it other than just having a bit higher standards, but you're going to sacrifice so much. And I also don't think that that's necessarily the healthiest thing for like a young teenager. But on the flip side, I also think that being the coolest kid and having the most amount of friends is also another extreme that you don't want to go to.
Yeah, but it's hard to even get to the point, I guess, that you realize your friendships don't align, because and there is that cliche that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But even like to more than that is the the people you spend time with, you adopt their biases, you adopt their worldview, not worldviews, but views on different situations. You've probably,
Yeah.
like you said, shared experiences. You probably view those experiences in a similar way, and they could be detrimental, but without that awareness or sort of self-work, I don't think you'll even get to the point that you can recognize that maybe they're those views that your friendships and your friends are creating and enforcing upon you, and they're subconscious, that can be detrimental.
I really noticed a massive difference in my subconscious as soon as I started to limit my interactions with people, because I would be the person who would like be, as I said before, like be at the bottom of the barrel of a friend group, and it really played on me. And maybe that's just the type of person that I am. I think that that does have a lot to play in it, because there's probably the other people at the top of the friend group who probably don't think about it as much as me, but it really got under my skin, and it really affected the way that I would like act day to day. And I remember specifically like when I first started doing training by myself, it was like I couldn't focus because I was always thinking about what they said, what they did, who they're talking about, what they said to me. And that's also another difficult thing to get over, because it's like, well, as soon as I distance myself from them, I know that I'm now suffering exactly what they're teasing everyone else about, because the only reason why I wasn't getting it as much as the other people that they were speaking about was because I was situated in their group, which is a reflection of them as well. But now that I've distanced myself, I know that they're now my number one, that they don't like me anymore, and they're going to make it a point. And I know exactly what they're saying because I've heard them speak about others in the same way.
Yeah.
It's
And
difficult.
it's brave though to almost have that belief that you're worth more. You know what I mean? That there is a possibility to be better, because I think a lot of people stay in that situation that you're in because of fear, being like, it is better just being part of this in group than being external. But there is a possibility that you can form like really close friendships that align with where you're going.
Yeah. On a biological level, what would you think the human trait or the natural human trait is on a survival level as well? Because I think about it and I'm thinking, if you were, back in the day, hitting around rocks and everything, you'd probably want to stay like conformed to your group or your village, and you wouldn't want to be ostracized outside of it, because it's probably a matter of life and death unless you're able to survive without them. And in this case, we were explaining how mentally we'd probably be able to survive without the group for a long enough time, but back in 2000s or whatever, I don't know, 200 AD or whatever, if they were to be ostracized from their group, they'd have a high chance of dying. We're actually almost in a privileged position to be even able to exit a group.
Yeah. But evolutionary psychology pretty much, it'll say that your brain still functions in a way that served for survival back then. So the emotional centers of your brain would desire the connection in the same way as we had to for survival back then. So whether you're excluded from a party in a friendship group, it's almost, that is life or death in that scenario. And your brain is serving you for survival, or it thinks it is. But then again, it is, if those neural pathways keep firing in that way, you will actually rely on those people that may serve you wrong. Because I think the biggest thing with all of this is awareness, being kind of mindful and being able to take a step back from it. And if you can view friendships in that way, you can be a bit more intentional with the people you spend time with, and a bit braver as well in making those decisions.
The bravery part's so difficult because we always want to protect ourselves. And like, I'm the first to admit that a lot of the actions that I took were convenient to protect myself as well. Like, the reason why I'm moving to Germany and making it like a wall, and not a Sleepy Joe wall, like an actual, hard border, Trump style. Like in that case, that makes it an easier cut because it's protection, and I'm protecting myself by not even, I leave all the group chats. I don't speak to anyone ever again, and it seems rough for the people who I don't want to cut off, and that's where I think there were a few misunderstandings. But I would also, ask for forgiveness to the people who think that they were cut off but weren't, because it was out of safety and protection of myself that I didn't want to be situated with people who I knew could say something bad about me. And I still believe most people who I did cut off but didn't mean to, who did take it the wrong way, probably did say bad stuff about me. And I don't judge them for it, because I probably would have done the exact same myself. So
Yeah.
a lot of sympathy there as well.
And it would be the same reason that we put on masks in front of certain people as well, is because there's probably an innate feeling that if you do show your true self, it will be not desired. And going back to the evolutionary psychology part of it, it is, you put on the mask to be like, I don't want to be part of the out group. Whereas, because it is a difficult thing to be seen as different, but obviously for not everyone is going to have the, how would you put it? Like the really high, brave ambition that you and I have and we kind of recognize through like what we've listened to, the people that we've associated with, that to get the results that we want to in life, you sort of have to be different. And it's cliche, but with that sort of delusional belief, that could give us a bit of comfort in that scenario. But a lot of people may not have found that route yet for them, or that ideology yet. So it is obviously very difficult.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest takeaways from this is that it actually is really difficult to do. Like, if you are able to do it, and I'm speaking from obviously a point of bias, a point of privilege. Like, I wouldn't say that anything that we're saying here is anything close to definitive truth. This is a lot of situational bias, to where Jack and I have, done pretty similar things ourselves to what we're saying, but also coming from a logical standpoint and everything combined. But the things that we are saying may not work for everyone, and it's not advice. As I often say, the best advice is to listen to none. But from this, take what you see as legitimate and logical to maybe give a go yourself, right? I think the key message for us is that it's out of love that you prioritize others and you have such high standards for who you situate with. And a lot of the time, I think that you don't know what a good friendship is until you have someone who is a great, great friend, like Jack for me. And I think when I started to see what we had, I then realized that I could actually have better relationships with people, invest my time in specific people. And that's why, like, when I went to the UK and I met up with Valentin for the first time, which was like a wild experience, because we had zero shared experiences at that time. We only really had ideology, and then we related on a few things because we were both German. That was it. But until we met each other in person, and that's the most and only shared experience that we have. It was the best. I'd love to do that every day, but the reason why it's so precious is because it's not every day. And I think that we also both respect each other's time so much that it is once a week non-negotiable. Now, for Jack and I, it's more than that because we've got the podcast. But additionally, like, if I spent every single day with Jack, we'd almost just get pissed off at each other. And we respect that. We respect each other's time, each other's standards, and our friendship so much that we don't want to bombard it. And that's why, like, I think that we want to try and make everything progressively bigger. And actually, did you listen to the Shits and Gigs episode this week? Okay, James and Fuhad were talking about how they need to limit their interactions. Because, so they went on holiday recently, and they were talking about how they're spending too much time with each other. And you could tell James was pissed off, bro. It was funny. Like, he was just keeping silent when Fuhad was saying stuff, and you could just tell, oh, he's not having this one. And I'm like, they've definitely spent too much time together. And it's, again, it's not inherently bad, but it's just being aware that when you spend so much time with people, there will be conflict. But also, I think that you have to be okay with conflict. Like, the more time that Jack and I will spend with each other, the more petty we'll get with each other. But then additionally, we then have to be okay with being petty, because we have to then, and actually, to be honest, I'm not going to lie, I don't think you and I could ever get to a point where we're really petty, because we also are aware enough to realize. Don't speak to yourself.
But I think,
we'll see.
Like you said, the boundaries and the borders for your time, you need to put in play. We're obviously still learning. This is sort of the framework we've made from our own experiences, but
Yeah.
setting this in place is almost preventative so that it doesn't get to that stage where you have to deal with the conflict. It's knowing
Yes.
that, because you're right, it's not inherently bad to spend every moment with someone, but it could get to a stage where that could be detrimental to the friendship. And I think recognizing that and setting the boundaries out, strongly, I think is very important.
You know what I think we should do? I think every single month we should actually just dedicate an episode to talking about how we're feeling and just like talking about like in terms of how we're feeling about each other, even like how are we going with the podcast, things like that. Because like when we think about all of the processes that we do, and maybe we have to get a bit more clear on that structure, but when we think about all the processes that we do, and I think about all the processes that I have in my life in place, it's like I have so many preventative measures to make sure I don't go off track. If I care about someone so much, should I also adopt that same methodology with them? I think so.
Yeah. I think that is very important, and to share that as well, because friendships are obviously a two-way thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think we definitely do that individual piece for us, so that it's sort of, and that probably helps with us because we do so much awareness that it kind of serves for both of us. We probably do similar things, whereas in other friendships in life, I think it is very useful.
Yeah, and maybe it doesn't even have to be a shared thing, actually, thinking about it. Maybe it could just be an individual reflection. And to be fair...
I thought we were going to get a couples counselor on. I was excited. Could you imagine?
We can still do it. Yeah. We can... So, Nick, how's Jack making you feel? The way that he just says, just pisses me off. That'd actually be so funny. We're not at that point yet.
Not yet. Yes. Yes is the key word.
Give us 20 years and maybe we'll be, fisticuffs every single afternoon. Yeah. Tell me I'm a donkey again one more time.
Oh, well, if you don't unpack the dishwasher.
Actually, yeah, by then we'd have to get married as well.
We would.
So, yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. That's funny. Okay, I think, that we can talk about that a little bit more, but I do think that's a really good point about investing the time to talk about the processes, because we are very process orientated and we actually share our processes for transparency as well, which is also good. But we also do, like, I'll be honest, like every single time that I have a conversation with Jack, or even the days following, I always write in my gratitude journal how grateful I am for Jack. And like, I'm not afraid to admit it. Like, I truly am so grateful for Jack in my life. Like, I say that with 100% confidence, and I make that aware to Jack, and vice versa. Like, we always try and exude gratitude to each other, which is, I think, a really good thing.
Yeah, and I think that it is, because it is a small gesture, but for both of us, like, if we do receive that message, it does reinforce that feeling. And I think the biggest thing, I think the challenge as well that we notice for us is, after we have a call or this podcast or even messaging, I would go into life a lot more inspired, a lot more energized, and almost like kind of just confident in myself in general, which it is because it's not only that we align in our ideology, but it is a safe space. And I think the challenge for people who are just starting, kind of learning about this framework and trying to differentiate different friendships in their life, is being mindful of how you feel after probably interactions, because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And I don't think that I was too cognitively aware of the positive interactions that I had with people, but I think what made me aware of the positive was the sheer amount of negative that I had, to where I'm like, subconsciously, oh, well, this person, it just feels nicer to be around and speak with them. Well, maybe just through natural selection, and as I said, when you have more things on your plate and you come a little bit more selective as you grow older, you'll be like, okay, I'm probably not going to fork out time for these people because it doesn't give me, too much. It gives me actually a negative. How about I fork out more time for this person? And I just think naturally, it's just how it kind of works.
And I believe that everyone is an extrovert around people they feel comfortable with. The introverts and extroverts sort of people either identify as one or the other. But
Yeah.
around some people, you'd probably be an introvert. I'd be an introvert, and you're socially
Yeah.
drained and you hate socializing. But then around others, you can be talking for hours. So I think it is
Yeah.
finding those people that, you're not afraid to be your authentic self with.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got to the point where we're almost too authentic that we forget the camera rolls.
Yeah. But
Check out the Bondi
luckily,
video if you haven't.
those clips will never find the light of day, hey?
Well, there was a few sensors in there to make sure. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think the last thing that we can go into is probably looking at the framework a little bit more, just so that the people listening can actually take action from this. Because what we're doing is we're actually creating a newsletter for people who listen to this podcast, where Jack is doing a lot of the, you could say, the science side, and then I'm doing a lot of the visual side. So it's a really cool like combination that we have to where, okay, Jack's got the psychology stuff taken care of, right? I wouldn't say that I am too attuned or too accustomed to psychology. It's very much an interest of mine, although I would say I'm logical. Jack's here to iron out my what do you a wrinkle? Iron out my wrinkles, and then from that we get a really awesome product. And also, whenever Jack has something that he thinks of, he can just take it and run with it, and then I create something visually appealing so that people can then use it.
Trying to show
And
that what we talk about isn't just waffle that we've created, but there is some sort of logic from people smarter than us who've actually, formed the foundation of what we talk about.
It's the truest, like, because we do just come a lot of the times and just come with like a random car thought and then think about it and speak about it, and then we think, oh, that's brilliant, and then we can kind of get a little bit of confirmation bias on it, or the opposite, and think, oh, actually maybe that's not too true. But now with the newsletter, we want to come informed and then have applicable things for people who also want to take action. So that newsletter will be on both LinkedIn and email. So if you do want to sign up, there should be a link at the bottom of this on whatever platform that you listen to sign up to this newsletter. And I think we'll start off with bi-weekly, so fortnightly, and then we'll start to ramp it up if people are taking it well. And it will be applicable, simple little homework sheets. And the first one will be the friendship circle, just a simple little PDF talking about who is in each circle and what it means for each person to have someone in those circles. The boundaries are kind of interpreted for yourself. Like if you don't have anyone who you can set specific time to once a week as a non-negotiable, then maybe it means that you don't put anyone there for that time. So you set the standard for yourself. But listening to this episode hand in hand kind of gives you a good place to take off from that. Do you have anything that you wanted to speak about the newsletter?
No, I think it is almost more of a deep dive into what we speak about, the science behind it. And like you say, like you love to say with don't take any advice, it's a good foundation of what we speak about, why we're speaking about it, the science behind it, and then an opportunity to make your own interpretation of that. And I think with the circles, when we spoke about it before, I think we'll overlay a graphic of what we kind of see the circles as, just so that listeners have a framework to go off.
Viewers have a framework to go off.
Viewers. Are people viewing this? Oh, goodness, should have. Hope not.
Should have done the hair a little bit more, eh? Don't worry, haven't got a haircut in 4 years. I think, as you kind of preface there, like, this will look really professional. It will sound really professional. And it's a little bit of visual coercion, making it look really nice. And that's just the stock standard. Like, if you join a cult, actually Scientology, I was walking past a Scientology place yesterday.
Don't make this sound too much like a cult, Nick.
I can't give the game plan away. But just like as Jack said, like, it will visually, audibly, everything will look professional. But at the end of the day, don't take it seriously just because it looks and feels professional. Take what you think is applicable to your life and reference this as only a guidance point. Because, like, one thing that I think is really prevalent is that perception is deceiving. And this will look like this is the be all and end all. This will look like it's the right way to do it because you haven't seen any other way of doing it before. So this looks professional, and because it landed in your inbox, and because you listened to this episode, you think that it's 100% accurate. It's not. It's not. This is a framework. This is a guide. This is the way that we've done it. Is it the best? Well, I've already told you that I think that I should have done it another way. So
yeah,
no.
And we'll look back at this and probably think that we were wrong, and what we learn in the future will serve us better. But I think, and it's all also sculpted. The whole point of sculpted is there's always more that you can learn. There's always more opportunity. You never get to that point where you know everything. And I think that's the same thing. It's like, it's operating with that curiosity and the willingness to learn. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Very, very good point to finish off there. And I do always try to make clear that like these episodes aren't advice. It's not anything where it's like 100% conviction. Although we come with 100% conviction, it's more like take what we say with a grain of salt. I think that anyone who ever speaks publicly, always take what they say with a grain of salt, because just because this looks nice, sounds good, whatever it is, it doesn't mean it's the be all and end all. And yeah, it's deceptive. There isn't a better way of doing it. Just don't fall for things, and take what you can, but don't swear by it. Just swear by what you do.
Yeah.
And always improve.
Yep.
Pretty simple.
100%.
Awesome. Well, did you have any closing remarks, Jack?
No, I think you've got it all, mate.
This was a sick episode.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Very good. Can I outsource the outro to you?
I'm gonna outsource it to some guys in Africa who do it for fun. You know those guys who do the happy birthday or whatever. I've seen those guys.
Well, you're gonna pay. You know how you can pay for the happy birthday message? You're gonna pay some celebrity to do the outro for you.
Yeah, I could do that as well. Maybe The Rock. Imagine if The Rock, like for the people listening, they just hear The Rock. Actually, I should do like with AI.
You look similar to him anyway.
Yeah. Actually, I think, is it the biceps? Yeah. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just swag.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Definitely not that.
Well, anyway, guys, The Rock definitely isn't going to do your outro. I'm going to do the outro. So thank you guys for listening to this episode. I love these episodes. They're sick. Make sure you do subscribe to the newsletter. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, whatever platform you're listening to us on podcast. Make sure you follow us there, and additionally go follow our socials. Jack is on LinkedIn, so make sure you also follow him on there. There'll be more from Jack's LinkedIn, which is good.
Yes.
I'm forcing him to do it through brute force, and couldn't have made it any clearer. Normally when you create cults, you don't say that it's a cult. So maybe that's, well, but that's maybe why we're not a cult, is because we're saying that we're a cult.
Yeah, it's like
great reference, but they won't get it. But yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next week, guys. Oh, that's funny, bro. That was funny.